Greetings everyone, I'm Detective STARBORN, and I'm glad to see you on my YouTube channel. Please be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on new and interesting videos. Thank you and enjoy watching. This chilling story will leave no one indifferent. A 14-year-old girl left her home for a walk and vanished without a trace. She was searched for over a month, and this investigation became the largest in the past 9 years. Thanks to hundreds of police officers and surveillance camera footage, this mystery was eventually solved, but the truth turned out to be far more tangled and shocking. In this video, we will tell you what happened to Alice Gross. Alice Gross was born on Valentine's Day, February 14, 2000, in London. She grew up in a complete loving family, and she also had an older sister. From an early age, the girl demonstrated a penchant for creativity. She loved drawing, played the piano and violin. Later, Alice began writing her own magnificent songs and performing them to her own music. We will show one such composition performed by Alice at the end of this video. In addition, the girl was passionate about fashion design and at the age of 11 even created a dress for herself, which she planned to wear to her school prom. When the girl was 13 years old, doctors diagnosed her with anorexia as well as depression. Despite all this, Alice continued to engage in creativity, and in the future, she had every chance to achieve colossal success. On August 28, 2014, Alice told her mom that she was going for a walk. She was on her school holidays and had plenty of free time, so the girl loved to walk along a small water canal and river near her home. They lived as a family in a London suburb called Hanwell, and her usual route was 4.5 kilometers. The girl left around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, promising her parents to return around 6 in the evening. Later, she texted her father that she would be home soon. However, Alice did not return at the appointed time, and when it was already 7 in the evening, her parents began to worry. They tried to call her, but the girl's phone was turned off. The fact that Alice suffered from anorexia and depression only added to the anxiety. The parents feared that something could have happened to her. Due to her physical condition, she experienced constant weakness and could faint. The parents called several of her friends, hoping that Alice might be with them, but no one had seen the girl that day, and her mother and father decided to contact the police. They immediately started the search and first examined the route that Alice usually walked. Her relatives and family friends also took part in the search. Alas, they failed to find any traces of the girl, but the detectives managed to locate several witnesses. Thanks to their testimonies about where Alice passed, the police were able to more accurately determine her route, which in turn allowed them to narrow the search area and select several street cameras that could have captured her. After examining the footage, the detectives indeed found Alice. Almost immediately after leaving home, she was caught on the first camera, heading along the Grand Union Canal. Sometime later, she was spotted in the Brentford area, which was further down the canal. The last time the camera captured her was on her way back, near the Trumpers Way Bridge. The police also relayed information about the teenager's disappearance to the media, which spread the news about this case throughout London within the first hours after the disappearance. As a result, the detectives received several calls from witnesses who had seen Alice. Unfortunately, all this did not bring the police closer to finding the girl. Based on the camera footage and witness accounts, she disappeared on her way home after covering most of her usual route. But what happened to her remained a mystery. 3 days passed, and the police continued to study the footage from cameras in nearby areas, as well as search local parks and other secluded places. At the same time, patrol officers went door to door along Alice's route, asking questions to local residents. On September 1st, the girl's relatives recorded a video appeal in which they begged her to come home. They also asked anyone with any information about her whereabouts to contact the police. At that point, the investigators were considering several theories. The first and most alarming was the abduction version. Despite the fact that most of Alice's route passed along city streets, there were many remote sections hidden from prying eyes where the girl could have been attacked. Moreover, The London police often deal with situations where people are kidnapped right in the city center, let alone in the suburbs. The second theory was that she had run away from home. Alice's parents feared that depression could have pushed her to such a decision. They also did not rule out that the girl, due to her illnesses, could have taken her own life. But for the police, these versions seemed unlikely. At her 14 years old, Alice was hardly able to run away and hide, especially without outside help. And if she had taken her own life, she would most likely have been found already. Every day, this case attracted more and more attention from the public, and on September 3rd, it was transferred to a special Scotland Yard unit. Even though they usually only worked with murders, the detectives assessed the chance of the girl returning home as high. Scotland Yard organized a large-scale search, which was immediately joined by hundreds of volunteers. Seeing her parents' and sister's heartbreaking appeal on the news, caring Londoners scoured the area from early morning until late at night. And the very next day, the detectives announced the discovery of the first substantial clue. They managed to find Alice's backpack, which contained her boots that she was wearing that day. It was found relatively close to her home. This find allowed the police to narrow the search area, focusing on a small section near the canal. The investigators understood that the girl was unlikely to have taken off her boots herself, thrown them together with the backpack, and run away. She had no spare shoes with her, so the situation was becoming increasingly confusing. Scotland Yard decided to publish all available footage from the cameras that captured Alice. The backpack with shoes indicated that the girl could be in serious danger. The main version still remained abduction, but the investigators did not completely rule out the possibility that the girl could have taken her own life. For this reason, they tried to use all available resources to find her. Publishing the footage could attract more attention from the public, and someone might remember seeing Alice that day. Along with this, several hundred more employees from various agencies were involved in the search, and already 600 people were working on this case. Thus, this investigation became the largest in terms of the number of police officers involved since 2005. Some of them were directly involved in surveying the area, while others studied footage from hundreds of cameras that Alice could have been caught on. Scotland Yard also offered a reward of £20,000 for any information that would help find the girl. Despite the fact that the police failed to find her phone, they requested data from the mobile company about its last known location. It turned out that Alice sent a message to her father from almost the exact same place where her backpack was later found. Everything indicated that the investigators needed to concentrate specifically on this area. In this regard, it was decided to thoroughly examine the territory of several square kilometers. Every meter of land and water was manually inspected. Police squads literally felt the bottom of the river and canal for any clues. 2 days after discovering the backpack, it became known that the police had arrested a certain 25-year-old man on suspicion of Alice's murder. The next day, they arrested another person, but refused to comment on the situation until all the details were clarified. However, both suspects were soon released, and Scotland Yard stated that they had failed to establish the involvement of these two people in Alice's disappearance. More than a week passed, and during all this time, there were no developments in the case. Only on September 16th did the police make another statement. They said they were looking for a 41-year-old man named Arnis Zalkalns in connection with Alice's disappearance. He had moved to England from Latvia 7 years ago, lived in this area, and worked as a construction worker. Scotland Yard became interested in him for 2 reasons that at first glance seemed unrelated. Firstly, Arnis's colleagues at work reported his disappearance to the police back on September 3rd. The man did not show up for work, did not answer calls, and was not at home. It seemed that he had simply vanished. Secondly, the detectives found out that Zalkalns' route from home to work passed roughly along the same path that the girl was walking on the day of her disappearance. All this was not yet enough to draw any conclusions about the man's involvement in the girl's disappearance, but soon the detectives discovered something truly alarming. On one of the camera recordings, They noticed a middle-aged man riding a bicycle across the bridge where Alice had literally passed a few minutes before. This man turned out to be Zalkalns. Sometime later, he was caught on the next camera, and here the detectives noticed a very strange moment. The path between these cameras should have taken only a few minutes, but it took the man on the bicycle almost an entire hour to ride along this road. A reasonable question arose as to what he was doing all this time on such a short stretch. The police officers studied this area and concluded that he could not have ridden to the next camera by a longer route because there simply wasn't one. Even more alarming was the fact that all this was happening in the very area where Alice's path allegedly ended. The police also concluded that the man's clothes were wet when he rode out onto the road. Continuing to study the cameras, the detectives noticed how Zalkalns returned to that very spot on his bicycle 2 hours and 50 minutes later and left again after 50 minutes. At the same time, he was not caught on the camera located on the bridge. This indicated that the man had spent all this time inside a small blind spot. In addition, he was already wearing different clothes. About an hour later, he was caught on the camera of a local store, buying beer. The situation repeated itself the following morning. Zalkalns returned to that same spot between the cameras at around 7 o'clock and also returned there once more in the evening. All this was enough to obtain a warrant to search his home. It turned out that the man lived there with his girlfriend and their 2 daughters together. His partner also had no idea where Zalkalns had gone. Upon learning that he was suspected of murdering a girl, she stated that Arnis would never be able to do something like that. She characterized him as a caring and loving father. At the same time, Scotland Yard studied the man's biography and discovered a truly chilling moment. It turned out that Zalkalns had a rich criminal past. In 1998, while in Latvia, he had cold-bloodedly and methodically killed his wife after pre-digging a grave for her in the forest, for which he received only 7 years in prison. After serving his sentence, he moved to England, and the local law enforcement agencies did not even know about his criminal record in his homeland. The police searched Zalkalns' house and found a recently dug-up patch of land on its territory. They did not disclose information about whether they managed to find any evidence there, but a significant find awaited them in the house's basement. A broken back panel from a white iPhone 4S was found there. Alice had exactly the same phone. Upon examining the contents of his computer, the police also found out that the man had searched the internet for information about Alice Gross's disappearance a few days after it happened. Based on all this, Arnis Zalkalns was declared wanted. Scotland Yard feared that the man could have fled back to Latvia or another European country, so he was searched for throughout the European Union. But law enforcement agencies failed to find a single trace of the suspect. Meanwhile, a month had passed since Alice's disappearance, and on September 30th, the police made a disheartening statement. A human body had been found in the river near the place where the girl disappeared. At that moment, the identity had not yet been established, but the police shared one chilling fact. Someone had made considerable efforts and arranged everything so that the body would remain underwater and not float to the surface. Only the next day did law enforcement confirm that the deceased was Alice Gross, although no one doubted it anymore. Everything happened right in the place where she disappeared. The cause of death was strangulation. It turned out that Alice's body was wrapped in construction bags, tied to a large stump. In addition, the criminal had crafted a whole structure out of a bicycle wheel and bricks, which also prevented the body from surfacing. She also had no clothes on, except for one sock. The detectives visited the construction site where Zalkalns worked and found out that the same bags from his construction site were used to conceal Alice's body. After discovering the body, the police continued to search for Zalkalns, working closely with Interpol and local European special services, but they still could not find any traces of him. This continued until October 4th, when investigators made an unexpected discovery. They found the suspended body of a man in a park located just a kilometer from the scene of Alice's murder. 2 days later, experts confirmed that the deceased was Arnis Zalkalns. No one expected such a turn of events. Scotland Yard's main version was that the suspect had fled to Europe, but in reality, he had been right under their noses the whole time. Medical experts concluded that the man had taken his own life on the day of his disappearance, September 3rd, and could not be found for an entire month. However, there is nothing surprising here. Zalkalns chose a very remote and hard-to-reach place where he was extremely difficult to notice. With Zalkalns' DNA on hand, the investigators obtained even more evidence. Near the place where Alice's body was found, the police discovered a cigarette butt, which was sent to the laboratory. Experts extracted DNA from the filter, which matched Zalkalns' sample. In addition, the laboratory stated that the criminal's DNA was most likely found on the victim's body. They could not state this with 100% certainty due to how long the body had been underwater. His DNA was also found on the girl's backpack and shoes. By that time, the police had found out another chilling fact. It turned out that 2 years after moving to England, Zalkalns had harassed a 14-year-old girl just a kilometer from the place where Alice's body was found. The man had tried to commit some indecent acts, but the victim survived, and the man was arrested. This is where it gets interesting. The girl did not press formal charges, and the criminal was simply released. It is not entirely clear how this could have happened, but the fact remains. An adult man had molested a girl, ended up in the hands of the police, and avoided punishment. Moreover, information about this case only surfaced after the criminal's body was found in the park. Despite all this, the police continued the investigation, and it took them some time to piece together the picture of what had happened. According to their version, on that fateful day of August 28th, Zalkalns was riding his bicycle along the same route where Alice was walking. Noticing her in a secluded area, hidden from prying eyes, he attacked her with the intent to commit lewd acts. How events unfolded further, we will never know, but the outcome was tragic. Zalkalns killed Alice, after which he hid her body in several stages, constantly returning to that place. We will also never know why he decided to take his own life after what he had done. Can this be called a manifestation of conscience? A very controversial question. Alice's parents, who endured such a terrible tragedy, were outraged by the government's actions. They were perplexed as to how the British authorities allowed a convicted murderer to enter the country and stay here to live. They dedicated many years to fighting for the government to tighten control over immigrants and not allow criminals into the country. Unfortunately, they have not managed to achieve significant changes to this day. A month after Zalkalns' body was found, another interesting event occurred. The medical expert involved in this investigation left a folder with case documents on the train. 30 pages contained important information about the murder, including medical details and undisclosed specifics. The public, media, and Alice's parents harshly criticized the police, but there was nothing they could do anymore. The folder was never found. However, no one was going to put the deceased criminal on trial anyway. The investigators stated that if he were alive, they would have had enough evidence to take the case to court, but there was no guarantee of a conviction. The problem is that all the available evidence against Zalkalns was circumstantial, and he had a chance to avoid punishment, albeit a small one. Instead, a hearing was held in court, as a result of which the jury acknowledged the already obvious fact: Alice was murdered, and her death was not an accident. This procedure was a formality and did not play a significant role. Alice's funeral took place on October 23rd. Thousands of people came to the memorial that day, and at the end of the ceremony, a beautiful song that the girl had written and performed herself was shown on a large screen. Thank you for watching this video, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I look forward to your comments on this situation. That was Detective STARBORN. See you soon.